edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. We are live. We are breaking down the transfer portal. We're going to look at some of the players that have declared for the NBA draft. We got to talk about Duke. We got to talk about Indiana. We got to talk about Khalil Ware. There is a lot to talk about. It's been a wild 72 hours in the world of college basketball. We are going to get to all of that. Rob Dauster here. I got Jeff Goodman here with me, and I have a special guest. It is Walter Clayton Jr. Iona star, and I'm going to call you a star, Walter.
He's a star.
And you are going to be making he's a star. Yeah, he's going to be making his commitment today. Average 16.8 points, 4.3 boards, 3.2 assists, 1.8 steals, and shot 43% from three. If that ain't a star, I don't know what a star is. Walter, appreciate you being here today, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Appreciate y'all for having me.
No,
so I want to start y'all with this, Walter. You ended up at Iona, but you are from Florida. You are a Florida native. How did you find your way to New Rochelle? How did that end up being the place that you ended up going to for your first couple of years of college?
I was one of the kids going through COVID. So, recruitment was a little slow with that. And, I had a couple schools, but none really, that I really jumped at. But then, Coach P came in and offered me. So it took me about a couple of days, and I just came up here to New York. I felt like this was what was best for me.
All right, so give me the best thing you learned playing for Rick Pitino, who a lot of us call the best coach, along with Bill Self, in the country.
One of the most important things I learned for sure was like just playing through adversity. Things are gonna happen throughout the game, so just being able to stay calm in those moments is probably one of the best things I learned.
So when you're with the whole transfer portal process, obviously you're going through a second recruitment. How much different was it compared to what happened when you were in high school and when you were heading to college the first time? Do you feel like you've learned more? Do you feel like you're more of a wily veteran in this process?
Nah, definitely not a veteran. I was one of the COVID kids, so we didn't get visits. We didn't get any of those things. Everything was over Zoom, so it was actually completely different for me. So this process, I actually enjoyed it a little bit.
Did you end up going on any visits in this process, or were you able to?
Yeah, I went to Florida, and then I just came back from St. John's this past weekend.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Were those kind of the two that you identified pretty quickly, or like take us through the process and how overwhelming it is for you guys right now in the portal, because it has changed. I mean, you got, 1,300 kids in the portal right now. People aren't recruiting freshmen in high school like they used to be. They're recruiting transfers. How nuts was it like the first day or two when you went in?
It was actually pretty crazy. Everybody was hitting my phone, but it did happen pretty quickly, me cutting my schools down. Kansas was definitely the other school that was considered. So you had Kansas, and then you obviously Coach P at St. John's, and then Florida, gave it a chances back home, kind of my dream school. So those were kind of the three, and then leveled it down to the two.
So we were talking about it before we went live, Walter, but you guys you called it a tough draw in the NCAA tournament, right? The national champions is a number 4 seed, but you played fantastic for a half of basketball. Do you feel like that level of, I don't know if exposure is the right word, but if you kind of put your name out there for a lot of people, do you think that helped get some of these bigger programs interested in you?
Maybe. I don't know. I know a lot of people do like their research and stuff, look at numbers and all that. So maybe it did a little bit, but I don't really know.
So I was there for that game, and I was blown away by your poise, by your decision making, just kind of the way you play the game. That was the first time I had a chance to see you in person. Describe your game for people that didn't see that game and haven't seen you in person. Describe your game. Give me a scouting report on yourself.
I feel like I'm a smooth-paced guard, can shoot the ball very well, can attack, and just create for others, kind of just the all-around player a little bit. I feel like that about myself.
What's your weakness? What do you need to work on?
Weakness for finishing for sure, like, floaters. I got to get my left hand better, got to get my handle tighter, off-ball defense, I got to get better at that. There's a lot of things I got to get better at, and I'm working to improve.
Well, we're going to find out where you're going to be working to improve it coming up right now. Walter, it's the time, man. Where are you going to school?
I'm going to be taking my talents over there to Florida, but I just want to thank Iona first, thank Iona for these past 2 years. It's been great being up here in New York, getting a new experience. And then obviously I want to thank Coach P, for believing in me out of high school and stuff like that. So, really thank Coach P for helping me develop my game over these past 2 years to get me to this level right here. So I'll be taking my talents to Florida.
The best part about that
Congrats, but let's face it, you just couldn't handle the cold weather. That's all it was, right?
That's maybe a little part of it.
Yeah, the best part is that now you and Todd Golden actually look like you guys are going to be the same age. So,
why did you choose Florida? What was the biggest reason for people that don't know? You grew up an hour and a half away?
Yes, sir, about 2 hour and a half, 2 hours. Really, I chose Florida because when I went there, I was kind of blown away on the visit. Everything they were showing me, like plans they have, and everything really starting to kind of come together. His vision for where he want to get the Florida program back to. And I'm kind of just a feel guy. Like throughout this whole process, it's just been going with my feelings and stuff like that. So I just honestly just feel it's the best choice for me. Going to be the best fit for me.
Well, listen, Walter, congratulations. You are going to enjoy it down there. Todd Golden is a great coach, and the SEC is a brutal conference. So you're going to be in for a lot of wars down there. Congratulations on your commitment. Thank you for being here. And now a quick message from our sponsor. Tell you guys about our sponsor for today's episode, Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 a few weeks back. When we get in the middle of college hoop season, it can be hard for me to eat and drink as healthy as I probably should be, especially in late February and March when the schedule gets really busy. But I found that I've felt better as I've made AG1 a part of my daily routine. I take AG1 in the afternoons after the coffee is worn off and once the itis post-lunch is kind of set in. And what I found, my energy levels are up. It's improved my digestion. And as a result, I'm not only more efficient and productive in the most important time of the year for me and for the field of 68, but I'm working out more consistently. I just feel better. AG1 is so much more than just a greens powder. It's comprehensive health and the power of habit in one. Covering my nutritional basis for the day literally could not be easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. I just mix one small scoop of the AG1 formula with water, and I drink it every single afternoon. Done. Just like that. I also like that it only costs $3 a day. The price is right. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is the answer. They are giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Free! Just go to athleticgreens.com/field68. That's athleticgreens.com/field68. The link is in the description below. Check it out. Support the field of 68 and feel better about yourself. So there you have it, Goodman. Walter Clayton is on his way to Gainesville. That's the second commitment that Florida has landed. They got the transfer from Marshall. You know how I am with pronunciations of last names. I'm not even going to try to do it, but the kid can play. So where do you see Todd Golden's program standing right now with the pieces that they're adding?
Well, I mean, again, a year ago he got the job, and you had to completely scramble and take who you could. And some of those guys were decent, but this year I think you got a little bit of a head start in the portal. You got NIL, which he might have thought he had in place a year ago, but I don't think he did. Now he's got it in place to be able to get somebody like Walter Clayton Jr. I just love this kid. I do. Again, watching him against UConn, you can just see like the feel he's got for the game. He can be an all SEC guard. I believe that. And again, all you need to know is Rick Pitino wanted him desperately in the Big East at St. John's to understand not only what he can do now, but his upside. And the kid Micah from Marshall, freshman, was under-recruited as well. Big-time shot blocker. Again, usually you make your biggest jump from your freshman to your sophomore year. Rebounder, can run. So I think Golden's certainly in a much better place today than he was a year ago.
Yeah, and I just got a text from somebody that's in the know that said the last name is not that hard to pronounce. It's Handlog 10 and just put it all together. So Handlog 10. So there you go.
You did it. Good job. Good job.
I got it covered, man. The one thing I do like about this commitment for Florida is that if you look at Todd Golden's best teams at San Francisco, they had killers in the backcourt. Jamari Bouye, like I could see Walter Clayton kind of playing that role. And I don't know if he's an NBA level player. Like we will find that out this year. Right. But I do think that he is a guy, like you said, all SEC caliber. We saw what he did in the first half against UConn. So I think that is a very good, very important addition. All right, let's get into some of the other stuff that has happened over the course of a wild 72 hours in the world of college basketball, Goodman. UNC added a couple of recruits. We had Indiana pick up a former top 10 prospect. Khalil Ware is heading to Bloomington. Caleb Love, is he the right fit at Michigan? We got to get into the top 10 available transfers. You have your list. I have my list. We'll see how much we differ on all of them. And, LJ Cryer to Houston. We have Tremont Mark heading to Arkansas. A lot has happened, but the single biggest piece of news that we have gotten over the course of the college basketball offseason, in my mind, came literally 2 hours ago. Kyle Filipowski is heading back to Duke for his sophomore season. He will be joined by Mark Mitchell. He will be joined by Tyrese Proctor. This loaded freshman class that John Shire brought in last season, he's bringing back 60% of it for their sophomore years. Now, they lose Mackenzie Mbako, but you still have a very good freshman class coming in behind it. There's still a chance that you could get Jeremy Roach back. We saw how good this team was over the course of the last 6 weeks of the season. Now you get most of the most important pieces back. How good can Duke be? Where do you see them standing heading into next season?
I mean, they're my preseason number one. I had them at 2. And I really didn't. I thought it was a 50-50 shot at best that Filipowski would come back. I'm surprised in a way because I think he would have been a first-round pick. And he went from a guy that wasn't on the board really a year ago in the first round, but he was Duke's best player this year. And there's no argument there. I mean, you talked about how hard he played. And he was a guy that in the preseason Duke didn't love because he wasn't playing well. Then when the lights went on, he was their best player early in Portland. He was their best player late. So I think him coming back, I like Mbako a lot. I really do. He hasn't played great. He wasn't great in the McDonald's game that I saw last week in Houston. I like him a lot, but I'll take this trade any day of the week because you're getting a proven dude up front who's got a year of experience, who already put up 15 and 9 as a freshman. Think about that. As a freshman, Kyle Filipowski should be on people's All-American list, preseason All-American list this year. And now you got Proctor back.
Should be. I think you can make an argument that Duke might have 2 of the 10 best players in college basketball next season. I think we're going to see a monster year from Tyrese Proctor. I don't know if I'm going out on a limb a little bit on that one, but I think that there's a very real chance in my mind with an off season of work, kind of get his body a little bit stronger, kind of improve that quickness a little bit. I think he could be a first team All-American. Right. And I know that I can already see what the chat is saying right now. Right. Oh, everybody loves Duke. Media loves Duke. You guys love John Shire. Look, Proctor was awesome for the last probably the last 8 weeks. When Duke made their leap, it coincided with Tyrese Proctor making his leap. All right. And getting moved to the point guard spot. I think he's going to have a massive season. He did all that last year when he was supposed to be a senior in high school. And you add to that a guy that averaged 15 and 9 and is coming back. They're going to be really good, man. I don't know if they'll last as the preseason number 1 team because there's a lot of moving parts left in college basketball.
I don't know who overtakes them now. I mean, I just don't know. Somebody's going to have to really, really load up to overtake them because, again, they've got a good freshman class coming in as well. And I think you know how much I love TJ Power, not just because he's a Massachusetts kid, but he was arguably the best player on the circuit last year in July. You can make a case that he was the best player, the most productive. He's a versatile, multi-dimensional forward who can shoot the shit out of it. He passes, he plays hard, he can rebound, take it off the rim and go. There's not much TJ Power can't do. So now you go in, Filipowski, Proctor, probably Roach, probably Mark Mitchell. That's your starting 5. And you got a lot coming off the bench, a lot of good freshmen, but you're not reliant on freshmen. That's the biggest thing, especially if Roach comes back. You've got a junior, you've got a couple of sophomores that play big roles, and then you add in, actually you got 3 sophomores, and then you add in some freshmen that aren't going to have to do some heavy lifting this year.
Yep. There's a lot of teams that I think have a chance to kind of get in there. We will see what happens with UConn, depending on who comes back and who ends up staying there. I think that if Purdue as the right point guard piece in the transfer, and we'll get into that. There's a conversation to be had about one of the players that they just added. I think there's a very real argument to be made that they are deserving of at the very least consideration. I still love Marquette, depending on who they bring back.
But right now, are you really going to pick? If I'm telling you,
no, I'll tell you, I have Duke preseason number 1. Right. I'm just saying that there's a lot of moving
Marquette
parts.
Too.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving. Last year, I think when we kind of headed into the season, there was a lot of there's a lot of good teams. It doesn't feel like there are going to be very many great teams. right? That's kind of the consensus that we had, at least early on last season. The way that the tea leaves are kind of shaken up here, like, I think that there could be a lot of great teams. Like, I think we could see a situation where there's like 5 or 6 teams at the top of the sport that are just very, very, very good. And Duke is absolutely going to be one of them. And I'll probably have them preseason number 1 as well. So
you better have them preseason number 1.
Do you think Roach is coming back? Do you think Roach is coming back?
I just don't. Where's he going? Like, where's Jeremy Roach going? Tell me.
I that's why I'm asking you. I think that he probably should be returning to school.
I mean, get your degree and, go play pro ball after that. But like, to me, I don't know. I mean, I would think he would see all the pieces around him this year and the fact that he can be a leader on a team that might win a title.
Here's the example I'll give you. Quinn Cook, right? Quinn Cook had a chance to. It was kind of the same situation, right?
Sure.
You got Tyus Jones coming in. You got this superstar point guard coming in. What are you going to do? He played off the ball. He accepted a role. And then Quinn Cook lasted, like, how long has he just kind of been on the fringes of the NBA? Right. I want to look up see how much money Quinn Cook has made in his life. Playing in the NBA.
A lot more than you did.
A lot more than I did.
A lot more.
I bet it's a lot more money than people probably realize that he's made. Yeah, he's made like $7 million in his career playing basketball in the NBA.
You made like $700 in your career.
Yeah, just like coming off the bench, playing a role, doing a job. That, to me, that's what Jeremy Roach should be aspiring to. And I'll tell you what, $7 million doesn't seem like much with the NBA numbers that are currently going around, but $7 million is $7 million. All right, speaking of teams kind of on Tobacco Road, let's talk about North Carolina, because while Duke is sitting here absolutely loading up, North Carolina is not doing the same. They've lost Caleb Love to the transfer portal, which could be addition by subtraction. And the 2 pieces that they've added, Jalen Withers and Paxton Wojcik. And I don't know if either of those, like, those aren't. Kyle Filipowski coming back to school moves the needle. Tyrese Proctor coming back to school moves the needle. Does Jalen Withers or Paxton Wojcik move the needle for you, Jeff?
What do you think the answer is to that?
I think it's going to be a resounding no, sir.
A hell no. And with all respect to both those players and Paxton Wojcik in particular, because he's the son of Doug Wojcik, who I've known a long time, who's an assistant at Michigan State right now. They're pieces. And Jalen Withers, listen, I remember seeing him 2 years ago in practice in the preseason. I was like, this kid has a chance. He looks like an NBA player, but he's not an NBA player because he doesn't play with the motor of an NBA player. He's got to play harder. He's been on, 2 different coaches over the last couple of, really 3, when you talk about Chris Mack, Mike Pegues, and then Kenny Payne. He's been a part of kind of a losing culture the last couple of years. And that scares me. And the productivity just wasn't there. So to me, he's a roll of the dice. Paxton Wojcik is a good piece, but you need dudes to play with RJ Davis and Armando Bacot right now. You need guys like, these are pieces, but they've got enough pieces. Seth Trimble, I think, could take the next step. I hope he does at Carolina, and he can form a really good backcourt with RJ Davis next year. But they need another dude on the wing. That's to me the biggest thing they're lacking right now is a big time wing scorer.
Would Harrison Ingram be that guy? Would he be enough?
I mean, he'll help. He'll help. I mean, he's number 4 on my board right now of available transfers. Some might think that's high, but Harrison Ingram's still talented. Again, didn't do as much as we thought, last year at Stanford, but he was productive in the Pac-12. He's still a player who you can plug in there and he can make a difference for him. Is there we're still early on. There's still some other guys that are going to go in the portal, but as of right now, I would say yes, Harrison Ingram, can help them. He's not a great shooter. That's the only thing I worry about with Harrison Ingram. And I think Carolina needs shooting, and that's why they got Paxton Wojcik. I
was going to say that's the one argument. I agree with everything that you just said, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here and just kind of argue in favor of Carolina, because I don't if the process that Hubert Davis is going through right now is he's saying, all right, look, RJ Davis is going to be our guy and Armando Bacot is going to be our guy, and we're going to build what we do around those two and let them be, let our stars be stars and let those two guys be stars. And then what they're doing is adding a guy in Jalen Withers that shot 41% from three last season as a 6'9", kind of probably call him a stretch forward. Like that's probably the best way to kind of phrase what he is. Although if you want to know the issues with Louisville last season, there were times that he was playing the two, right? Like that's not ideal.
Yeah,
then you add in Paxton Wojcik, who averaged 14 points, 3.5 assists, shot 38% from three as an off guard at Brown last season in a better Ivy League than people realize. You add those two guys, you got some shooting, you got somebody that can space the floor. You're going to be able to create space for Armando Bacot to work in the paint. Then you add a guy like Harrison Ingram, who's a big athletic wing, who I think is probably, I would say is a better shooter than what his numbers have kind of said. But you add those three guys to that group that you have right now with some of the pieces coming back, like I can see it. If Hubert is saying, I trust that RJ Davis and Armando Bacot are the guys that are good enough to get us back to the top of the ACC, okay, I can kind of understand it a little bit. I don't know if that's the way that I would necessarily do it, but I do think RJ Davis is terrific. And I think Armando Bacot in the right setting is terrific. My big question with this group is, I think we saw it last year, the leadership aspect, right?
Yeah.
Do they have that? Do they have someone that can kind of, like we talked about it? Armando's not really that guy, right?
No, he's not, but maybe he'll grow a little bit more into that guy. Maybe it's just the dynamic changes now that Caleb Love is gone, right? Maybe those guys are forced to take on more leadership. They know they're the only two left at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But they need shooting around him. They got to have shooting around him.
Yes, I agree. And adding piece, like you need role players. The one thing I will say is, if you look at kind of what UConn did last year in the portal, where they just said, look, we're going to bet on Andre Jackson, Jordan Hawkins, and Adama Sanogo to be good enough, and we're just going to fill it out with pieces around them that we need. I think that model could work. I don't know if these are the right guys to do it, but I'm willing to let it kind of play out and see what happens from there. All right. The other, I don't know if we can call him a blue blood anymore, but the other kind of
I know where you're going with this.
Major powerhouse, huge fan base, huge program, historically successful program, Indiana. Yeah. They landed you could make the argument was the most talented player in the transfer portal this year. I don't think that that's crazy to say. Khalil Ware, former top 10 recruit, 7-footer, got a little bit of range, got a little bit of handle, got a little bit of perimeter skill. Yeah. Doesn't have the motor. He's coming in to be more or less the Trace Jackson Davis replacement. What does he mean for Mike Woodson, and what does he mean for this Indiana program?
I mean, listen, again, the funny thing is that's what they said about Trace a few years ago, right? He didn't have the motor. He didn't play hard. They're different. Obviously, Khalil Ware is a guy that was high on draft boards coming out of high school because of his potential, right? Super long. He's 7 feet. He runs the court exceptionally well. Thin, athletic, skilled to some degree. I mean, I remember seeing him down in, I forget where I was, somewhere in Georgia. And I was like, all right, he's going to be a guy who needs a year of development. And he went to Dana Altman, who's one of the best developmental coaches in the college game, and didn't do much because he wasn't ready. And Dana Altman didn't have guards early because they were all hurt last year. But Khalil Ware was not ready to honestly make an impact physically and somewhat emotionally. He needed a year to develop. And you almost wish the old rule was in place for a kid like Ware right now, where he'd have to sit out the year. Because I think, honestly, he would benefit from that more than most players. Some players don't need that, obviously. You look at Max Asmus or Hunter Dickinson. But I think Ware would really benefit from a year of sitting out. Well, he's not going to. He's going to play right away for Indiana. And, the one thing I worry about is, can he stretch it? Can he make shots consistently from three? He didn't show that last year at all. And Malik Renew, the other guy up front for Indiana, is also in a similar boat. He hasn't shown yet that he can make shots from the perimeter. He can stretch it more than Trace or Race did, I think, and shoot it from 12 to 15, maybe to 18. But those two, how are they going to coexist together, Rob, And are they similar, a little different, but are they similar to Trace and Race last year, where honestly, in today's game, they don't really work? You can rack up a lot of wins in the Big Ten. We've talked about this with guys that aren't skilled enough to step out and shoot it. But when you get to the NCAA tournament, it doesn't work.
Yeah. I think he's got to be able to shoot it. And I think that you're kind of betting on the fact that that jumper is better than the 27% that he shot from three, right? I think the big thing is going to be, will teams look at the success that UConn had with Klingon and Sonogo and rotating them, or the success that Purdue had with Trevion Williams and Zach Edey and rotating them? And will they be able to kind of convince Renew and Khalil Ware that that's the way that they need to play? And I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. And look, if Khalil Ware comes out here and is knocking down threes and becomes this switchable 5-man that can also be a rim protector, then it's not going to matter because they can just play them together. But that's going to be the really interesting thing, I think, moving forward. And frankly, a lot of that also depends on who Indiana ends up bringing back, right? And who they end up who else they end up.
They're waiting to hear. They're waiting to hear on the Xavier Johnson, obviously.
That's kind of what I was getting.
The waiver. Yeah. Yep. And if they have Xavier Johnson back, and he really shot it well when he was healthy the last half of his 2 years ago. They got it. They got add shooting. They got add shooting. We know that. Everybody's got add shooting. And honestly, if you don't have shooting, I don't know how you can go. I mean, I guess San Diego State did it this year without shooting, without a lot of it. So I guess you can go far, but it's a lot more difficult. You
got to have a bunch of 25-year-olds that are going to play rugby if you want to be able to do it.
Yeah.
You got to be. Yeah. You have to be. The honest truth is you have to be absolutely utterly elite on the defensive end.
And old, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Old. So that's kind of where I stand with Indiana. Do you think, gun to your head, do you think that this is going to be a team that can compete for a Big Ten title next season?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't. I mean, I just see Michigan State and Purdue. As of today, I like Michigan State with Tyson Walker coming back.
Let's get into that. How big is that for Michigan State getting him back?
Huge. Tyson Walker was one of the best guards in the country this past year. He went from one of the worst 2 years ago. And I remember, again, Izzo, I'm walking to the bus. I forget where it was. It might have been at Illinois. And he was just like, he was so frustrated because he's like, Tyson's going to be so good. I wish he had the year to sit and learn the system with us. And then he had the year and he was so good this past year. Aikens healthy, probably next year. Hogard back. So they've got their perimeter trio back. They probably lose Hauser. But Kohler will have a year under his belt. Sissoko's back. They bring in a talented freshman that I don't know how much we're going to see him, to be honest. Because again, he's somebody who's far away. He's a little bit like Ware. He's a little bit like Ware in that he needs a year to honestly be able to kind of acclimate himself both physically and emotionally. But he's somebody that Xavier Booker, who I just saw at the McDonald's game, talented, just needs a year. So they might not need a ton from him this year. Now,
if you can bring him in and have him be your impact 10 to 12 minute guy, or 10 to 12 minute a game guy off the bench early on, and let him kind of develop into that 20 to 25 minutes per game guy and make him earn that starting spot at the 5, I think that's the best case scenario for a freshman like Xavier. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like again, give him 10, 12, 15 minutes. Let him get his ass kicked a little bit in practice by the older guys. And then
he will at Michigan State. That's going to happen.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, just Xavier Booker, go at your own timeline here. Like, don't force it. Look at somebody like Ware, and I think it's going to help. Because if Ware had come out this year, he still would have been drafted probably in the first round. But honestly, he would have gotten killed. He would have been in the G League all year.
Look, I think Ware, FILIPOWSKI to a point, Mark Mitchell to a point, Tyrese Proctor, like a lot of these guys are able to make the decision where they say that this is where I think NIL is having the biggest impact, right?
Yes.
You can come back and you can make X amount of dollars where you don't have to, it makes going, here's the best way to phrase it. If you go pro now and you end up being a second round pick, a top 40 pick, you're going to get a guaranteed deal. But what that guaranteed deal is going to end up being is like, I think it's like 900,000 the first year, and then the second year is partially guaranteed. So so you get like a 2-year deal. First year is guaranteed money. So you're going to get a guaranteed like $1 million or something like that. But after that, you're going to have to go earn some contracts. That's not that much more than what a lot of these guys can get NIL wise if they decide to come back, especially if you're at a brand like an Indiana or a Duke or a North Carolina or something like that. And now, instead of having to earn your next contract playing in the NBA, you can go and prove it as a college player. And then when you come out, all of a sudden you're looking at like, okay, I could be a lottery pick, which means I'm going to end up getting $7 million a year guaranteed for 4 years. You know, like that's where the value is for NILs. You can get these guys to come back that are trying to go from being early second round picks that will get some guaranteed money to being lottery picks that are going to get like life altering guaranteed money. Does that make sense? Like that's where the impact is.
Yeah, listen, again, we've talked about it with the bigs because the bigs aren't going to the league anyway, but a FILIPOWSKI is a great example. My guess is Kyle FILIPOWSKI will get paid handsomely this year through NIL.
Yes.
You know, a lot of money because again, like he's looking at it, you know, he could certainly at worst case scenario, and he's not even a two-way. I mean, he's going to get paid. So you've got to make it worth his while to come back, and Duke can do that. There's certain programs that can obviously do that. So I think it helps any of those guys that are on the fringe right now.
Yep, exactly. I agree. All right. Some other big news that has happened over the course of the last 72 hours. You know what? I'm going to talk to you about Caleb Love. I haven't actually had a chance to talk with you about this Caleb Love to Michigan move yet.
Oof.
And I get the feeling you don't love it.
Why would you say that?
So tell me why.
How long you got?
I got about 28 minutes.
All right, we're not going to spend 28 on Caleb Love. Maybe 2 years ago, he would have deserved 28, but now he deserves about 2. I would say this. Caleb Love on his best. Let's start with this. Michigan is desperate. They're desperate. Not a lot of schools we're gonna take Caleb Love because again, this past year, Caleb Love didn't guard, didn't shoot a good percentage, couldn't make threes. Okay, he was hard to watch this year. As great as he was for a portion of that run 2 years ago in March and even into April, this year he didn't have as many of those moments. He didn't have many of those moments, and I think a lot of people were worried about bringing in a guy like Caleb Love because he needs the ball in his hands. And it's hard to change somebody after 3 years. It is hard to bring them in and change their habits, whether they're good habits, bad, whatever they are. It's hard to change your habits in 8 months, what you've built up over more than 3 years, but certainly 3 years in college. Well, Juwan Howard has no choice right now. It looks like he's going to lose Hunter Dickinson. He's in the portal. You know, obviously he lost his son, is going to the NBA. He lost Kobe Buffkin, who's going to the NBA. They have not a whole hell of a lot right now in Ann Arbor. So he was desperate, and desperate times call for desperate measures. And that meant taking a shot on Caleb Love, who is an enigma. You know, I don't want to be harsh on a college kid, but also, is he a college kid anymore when he's making probably more money than I'm making? So I feel like, you know what? He can handle a little bit of criticism at this point in his career. When he's a veteran, he's making money, he's made money. And yeah, he's got to kind of be held accountable, which he really wasn't last year. And also kind of change his ways a little bit and mature his game. And I don't think he did that at all. So, you know, again, do I think this works out for Michigan? Probably not. But I think it's something they had to do.
Yep. So you have Caleb Love, you have Doug McDaniel, you have Namari Burnett, the Alabama transfer who committed. He's coming off a torn ACL. He had a torn ACL 2 years ago. Trey Jackson, who was a talented 6'10" athletic lefty, can make shots coming from Seton Hall. Terrence Williams coming back. Like I don't hate that core. for Michigan. Like I don't
Really.
I don't
Really?
I don't.
What do you like about it? What do you like about it? That it's going to be an NIT team again? I mean, I don't understand. What would you like about it?
I think that there are pieces on there where if everything works out, they can make a tournament, right? Let's say if Juwan Howard is able to get Caleb Love to buy in, then and you're able to get Namari Burnett to kind of buy in, and you have shooters, you have guys that can space the floor. There's a lot of ifs. I would not bet on them being a great team, but I understand kind of what he's trying to do, right? You got to, at this point, you got to take shots. You got to take risks.
Again,
the only thing I'll say is
desperation. It's desperation in Ann Arbor. It's not like this was the plan. This wasn't the plan. This was, oh shit, we got to get somebody in who's proven, who can score. And oh yeah, let's pop in that Duke, that Carolina Duke game in the national semifinals so we can feel good about taking Caleb Love.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you have to do at this point. You mentioned Hunter Dickinson. So you have a list of the top 10 players left in the portal. Hunter Dickinson is probably the number one guy on that list for just about everybody. I would make the argument he is the most accomplished transfer that we have ever seen in college basketball. He's a guy that has been an All-American for 2 years, is a 3-year star at Michigan, has made deep tournament runs, has won stuff in the Big Ten, and now he is in the portal. It's kind of his recruitment in the portal is something where it seems very up in the air. Like if you, there's a lot of links to Georgetown. There's a lot of links to Maryland that has a lot to do with his DMV roots.
Yeah.
I would love to see him at Kansas. I don't know if that's something that is even in the cards for him. So what do you, I guess let's start with this. Yeah.
It's been super quiet, Rob. Okay, I mean, there's not a lot of info, and I give him credit because, again, I've been outspoken about the podcast he did, and it just caused a lot of undue criticism on Hunter, in which he should have been protected, but he wasn't, and I think that hurt him. I think that hurt him a little bit. So I think he's gone kind of rogue here a little bit and gone quiet. He had a Zoom, as I reported, with Kentucky, but I just don't see that happening. I could see a Georgetown situation happening. They've already brought in a couple of good guards. We'll talk about it in a bit with Jaden Epps from Illinois, Rowan Brumbaugh from Texas, the Styles kid from Carolina, who is highly touted. He's not a guard, but brought him in as well. He's looking for one more guard to bring in as well. Cooley is. So I think Hunter going home makes a lot of sense. I also think it's going to make a lot of sense how much NIL Hunter gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the most marketable and probably the most valuable that he's ever going to be. When you are a senior in college and able to go out and maximize it, I think that there's probably someone that he'll probably get 7 figures out of this. You think that's right?
He might have got 7 figures last year. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think, again, when he's hearing the numbers about what some of these guys are making and Oscar making 2-3 million, I'm sure he's saying to himself, well, like, if Oscar's worth that, I'm doing similar things. I didn't have as much around me the last couple of years as Oscar had, but I'm doing similar things, putting up similar numbers. Why shouldn't I be paid, in that realm?
So how is he a game-changing piece for a program, or is he just a guy that's kind of a hired gun? Because I go back and forth on it, right? Like he hasn't had a ton of success when it comes to like winning in the regular season, when it comes to how good Michigan has been. Like obviously they made the NIT last year, right? Like that wasn't a great situation. They had Hunter Dickinson, they had 2 pros, Kobe Buffkin and Jet Howard are both going to be first-round picks, and they made the NIT. The year before that, they were an 11 seed. Now they made it to the Sweet 16, but they were still 19 and 15 with Hunter Dickinson, 2 NBA players, and Moussa Diabate and Caleb Houston, right? So what kind of player would a team be getting if they get Hunter Dickinson?
I mean, listen, you got to surround him with the right pieces. You got to get him a point guard. Number one, they didn't really have a point guard through most of last year. Like Doug McDaniel was good towards the end of the year, but it took a while. They had Jalen Llewellyn. the first part of the year. Then he got hurt. So I think that's number one. You better get a good point guard. And Hunter's different. He's not a rim protector, right? He's not. You can't switch with him out on perimeter guys. He can't guard those guys. What he can do, and he's shown it, on the offensive end, he could step out and make a three. So I think on the offensive end, he's shown that he's a little bit more versatile than people thought. But defensively, that's the key for me. Offensively, you better have a point guard. And defensively, you better have some other switchable pieces with him that can help him defensively. And maybe a long athletic four-man who, I know there aren't many of these guys out there, a long athletic four-man who can step out and shoot it a little bit and also has the ability to be a little bit of a rim protector.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at what they had around him as a freshman, right? Franz Wagner, Isaiah Livers, Shawnee Brown, Eli Brooks, Mike Smith. Yeah, they had a couple playmakers, and they also had three wings that you can kind of switch 2 through 4. So I think teams like that make a lot of sense. I would look, if you put him on Kansas and let Bill Self scheme ways to get him seals and get him post touches, and then also use some of the stuff that you use this year where you're able to get, instead of having short rolls like they did with KJ Adams, you get Hunter popping to the 3-point line with some of those same actions. Like, he's going to average 22 and 12 if he goes to Kansas. So Hunter, I know you're listening to this. Adidas got money too. You don't need just checks from the check mark. Okay. You don't need just Nike schools. You will kill it at Kansas. Please take that phone call if it comes. All right, let's get into the rest of your top 10, the best players available. You obviously have Hunter Dickinson, number 1. Max Abmas, you have number 2. Are you worried at all about the fact that he is a smaller guard, right? Like, no, you're not.
I'm not. I mean, defensively, yes, I am. I think you got to have, again, the right guy with him. But ultimately, Max Abmas is what wins in the tournament, right? He's a guard who can get hot, who can carry you. He can shoot it from anywhere. He can make people better. He's got experience. He's older. Yeah, he's small. Listen, again, you better have another guard with you that can defend those bigger perimeter guys. But I think Max Abmas is as important of an addition, will be, to whoever gets him, whether it's, Paul Mills obviously going after him at Wichita State, since he took the job there, former coach at Oral Roberts. I think, Baylor should be in the mix. They lose LJ Cryer already to the transfer portal, and may lose Adam Flagler. He may go pro. Who knows if he uses his extra year. So I think Baylor makes a lot of sense, as Mills, if he can't get him at Wichita, he'll probably help out his former boss, Scott Drew, at Baylor.
Can I throw one more name out there that I would love to see him at? And look, I have no inside info on this. Please do not aggregate this. Please do not turn this into Rob Dauster says he's going here. I would love to see him at Kansas State and let him play the Marquise Noel role. You got another Baylor assistant, another guy that obviously is kind of in that same circle.
Totally.
And it's someone that look, Marquise Noel put up ridiculous numbers because Jerome Tang just kind of said, all right, Marquise, go out there and do what you want to do. And you don't think Max Abmas would see that? See this dude shining in Madison Square Garden? I think I would love to see that happen. All right, let's roll through the rest of this list. You have Ryan Nembhard, Creighton transfer at 3. You have Harrison Ingram at 4, Stanford transfer. Aaron Estrada of Hofstra, you have number 5. Stephen Ashworth from Utah State is number 6. Dalton, is that Dalton Necht?
Yes.
Dalton Necht, Northern Colorado, you have number 7. TJ Bamba, number 8. Caden Shedrick from Virginia at number 9. And Graham Ike from Wyoming at number 10. Let me start with this. Which, out of these guys, who do you think is the most likely to end up being a star on a team that is going to have an impact and going to be notable nationally next year? Like, who's going to come in here and have a chance to make a Final Four? Like, any of these guys, do you think?
I mean, Ryan Nembhard probably going to end up at Arizona, and they got some pretty good players last I checked, right? I mean, Pella Larson's back and Ballo's back, and they're going to probably lose Tubelis. Kirk Creason went to West Virginia, but Nembhard with Boswell, who made a big step last year at the end of the year. And again, I just
So can you just elaborate on why you say probably Arizona?
Well, I mean, Ryan's older brother, Andrew, transferred from Florida to Gonzaga, and Tommy Lloyd was the point person on that. So I would assume Ryan Nembhard goes to either Arizona or Gonzaga. Both need a point guard. I mean, actually, Gonzaga needs a point guard as much, if not more, than Arizona does. But Nembhard can play with Boswell. So I would anticipate Nembhard going to Arizona if I had to bet money on it. I don't know if I bet my house, but I might bet your house on it.
Ryan Nembhard and Kylan Boswell, to me, would be maybe the best backcourt in college basketball next year. It'd be very high up there. I think Boswell's a stud.
Me too. Love him.
They're going to be really good. Harrison Ingram, North Carolina's after him hard. Anyone else in the mix there?
Yeah, I don't know enough about his recruitment right now, but I know Carolina wants him. A lot of the top programs look at him as a hell of a piece. Again, he was a highly touted guy coming out of high school, averaged double figures at Stanford last year. Didn't shoot it great, but he's somebody that a lot of people are on. Aaron Estrada, who I saw in person last year, Hofstra played Charleston. Love him, big, strong guard. Remember, he started at St. Peter's, transferred to Oregon, didn't really play at Oregon, comes back to Hofstra, has a hell of a year, and now the schools that I'm told are the four are Alabama, Kansas State, Cincinnati, and Florida State. I think Florida State probably fourth on that list from what I'm told. So Alabama, Kansas State, or Cincy, and he'd be huge for any of those programs, any of them.
Yeah, he's a big guard that can really shoot it. Makes a lot of sense at Alabama. A lot of sense. We saw the success that Mark Sears had this year. It's not all that dissimilar from what Aaron Estrada can be there. Stephen Ashworth is a 6'1" guard that can shoot it. Average 16 points, 4.5 assists. Dalton Necht, 20 points.
I'll give you the quick school list on Ashworth real quick. Creighton really likes him. Gonzaga could end up there. So he's a guy, an elite shooter. Nobody really knows much about him other than the Mountain West. But Creighton, Gonzaga, Washington, BYU, San Diego State. So he'll probably stay out west unless he goes to Creighton. But those schools, I mean, they love him. Like all those schools are all over.
Yeah, the guys that can shoot it are there's a lot of value in that. Dalton Necht, 20 points, 7.5 boards, shot 38% from three as a 6'7", kind of like a combo forward kind of a deal.
Yeah. Well, here's the scouting report I got from him. Ready? I'll read it. I'll read it to you from a coach in the league. Can really score it mainly with the ball in his hands. Not the prototype 3-and-D, meaning he doesn't guard very well. He's way better hitting a pull-up three than running off a stagger and shooting. With his size, he's going to be a real pro. Issue is defensively, needs to learn how to use his length better. I love that
you're just reading off scouting reports that you get that you get from text. Hey, did you make these up like you make up all your other sources?
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that clown shit over there. Anyway, Dalton Necht visited Oregon, I'm told. I think he might visit Indiana, and Carolina really likes him. A shooter. So, like, he's perfect for what Carolina needs at this point. Again, a pro, a guy with some size who can shoot the hell out of the ball. So I think Carolina really likes him.
He's a little younger, too. You're not going to he's not just a one-year hired gun. TJ Bamba, Washington State transfer, Caden Shedrick, Virginia transfer, Graham Ike, Wyoming transfer. Let's start with TJ because Shedrick and Ike are kind of the same position. TJ Bamba, average 16 points, 3.5 boards. Again, 6'5" from the Bronx, shot it at 37%. He's down to Georgia Tech and Villanova, which is like, one, those are two very different schools, and two, they're both incredibly different from Washington State, which is like an incredibly different place from the Bronx where he grew up. Like, what's going on with this kid's decision making?
I don't know. I mean, these are
just throwing darts.
Well, I mean, my assumption is Damon Stoudemire probably has a hook, the new Georgia Tech head coach, to I mean, obviously he coached out in the Pac-12, right? He's been out that way. He was at Pacific, so he's got to have a hook to Bomba's, whoever Bomba's people are. And then the Villanova one makes sense from, like you said, he grew up in New York, not far. You want to come back to the Northeast, maybe it's just too far away in Washington State. So he'd be huge for both of these teams. Obviously, Damon Stoudemire's rebuild. and Kyle Neptune making sure they don't fall off, because Villanova right now, I mean, I don't know what your concern level is. Like, Justin Moore's coming back. That's huge. But they still lose a good amount from last year. And the expectations are for Villanova aren't like just to get in the tournament. The expectations are Final Fours, and that I just think they're a ways away from that, because they don't have.
He's got to look. Kyle's got to get in the mix in the transfer portal, and it's nice that he's getting in the mix with guys like this who, like, if you look at kind of the profile of what works at Villanova, TJ Bamba fits into that. All right, let's get into some of these other storylines that we have, because we got about 10 minutes left in the show.
Yeah.
LJ Cryer is heading to Houston.
Yeah.
They look like they're reloading. Jamal Shedd's back. Terrence Arsenault is going to be back. Arkansas has added Tremont Mark and Keon Menefield to pretty impressive transfers. But I want to start with this. So Georgetown has landed Jaden Epps, like you mentioned. They landed Rowan Brumbaugh, like you mentioned, who you love and you're going to have as a first-team All-American next year. They added Dontrez Styles. They are in the mix with a couple of other high-profile transfers. Compare the start that Ed Cooley has had at Georgetown to the start that Kim English has had at Providence, where he's brought back Bryce Hopkins, he's brought back Devin Carter, he's brought in Josh Aduro, and he is also in the mix for a couple of high-profile transfers. I don't know if I'm allowed to say them right now, so I'm not going to say them. Who's had the better start to their tenure at the new program?
I would say here's the thing to me is obviously Kimmy English is in a better spot today because he's inherited a couple of all-league guards or players, not guards, Hopkins and Carter, and he's brought Adura with him and other players from George Mason with him, Gaines. So I think Kimmy's in a great spot, and it's all about momentum, right? Like I use this often, and when Nate Oates took over at Alabama, I really did not love the hire from it being outside the box. I was like, how is he going to get it done down in Alabama? He has no idea what he's getting himself into down the SEC. But he inherited some good players, if you remember, like Herb Jones, John Petty. Like, there was talent there. Avery Johnson just hadn't done enough with it. Kim English walks into a great situation. Bryce Hopkins can't really go anywhere. He'd be a two-time transfer. And right now, as the NCAA has stated, those two-time transfers, if you're not a grad transfer, you're not eligible right away. You have to sit a year. So that's the beauty of, honestly, what Kim English inherited right now. Those guys can't go anywhere. So he's got a really good top three right now in Providence. And if you keep this thing going and you're in a brutal league, you're going to get momentum. And momentum's everything early. Look at, again, Nate Oates in Alabama. So I think Providence is in a better spot today. But as I say, Georgetown has the higher ceiling as a job. And I think Ed Cooley will be in a better spot in a few years. It's just going to take him time because it's a complete rebuild. I mean, he inherited a complete shit show with nobody.
Yeah, I agree. When you get back two guys that are going to be pros, that are going to be juniors, that are upperclassmen, that have already won something in the Big East, right? Or I'm sorry, that have already competed in the Big East, that understand what it's going to be about. Like, I think Jaden Epps is a terrific player. I think Rowan Brumbaugh has a chance to be really good. I like what Cooley's doing down there at Georgetown right now, especially and if they get Dickinson, which is like a big if. But if they get him,
that would be huge. That would be a seismic change for Georgetown.
I would still say that I think that the start, I would bet on Providence being better this year. Georgetown, they got 4 players. They still, like, he's got to build a roster. Right. Providence already has a team that's going to be anchored by 2 all-league guys that, like, I think both of them will play in the NBA. Devin Carter and Bryce Hopkins. Throw in Aduro, throw in the who's the point guard that transferred with him? I'm blanking on his name. Gaines. Gaines. You got Jaden Pierre coming. I think Jaden Pierre is going to be terrific.
I agree. I mean, the crazy part is Ed Cooley could put together a pretty good team this year, and they could still finish 8th in the Big East.
Yeah, good luck in that conference, man.
Right.
Shit.
Go through, like, literally, and I know we only got a couple minutes here, but, like, if we go through the Big East right now, right? All right. So you got, Marquette and UConn are at the top right now.
Probably 1 and 2. Yeah.
Creighton's up there. Xavier needs to do a lot of work, but they're going to be there.
They just added the kid from Western Kentucky, Davion McKnight, who's gonna he's gonna be.
They're
really
going to get another player soon.
Yep.
In the portal. So St. John's has Rick Pitino, by the way. They're going to be somewhere.
Rick Pitino went to St. John's?
Upper echelon, yes. Providence is going to be better than Georgetown. Who am I forgetting about? Villanova. Right? So that's 7 right there. And the DePaul is at the bottom. Butler's towards the bottom. Who are we forgetting?
Seton Hall.
Seton Hall, probably down there with maybe a little bit above Butler and DePaul right now, right there with Georgetown.
Either way, your point is made. Like Georgetown could be a team that's on the bubble, and they could also finish 8th place in the Big East. Like,
yep.
That's why this league is going to be a bear. That's why this league is going to be awesome. All right, so I want to talk real quick about we're running out of time here, but I do want to talk about Purdue because I think it's important to talk about them because they are a team that was top 5 for almost the entire year, won the Big Ten regular season title by 3 full games, got knocked out by a 16 seed in large part because they did not have enough ball handling and veteran point guard play. They're bringing back the 2 guards, Fletcher Lawyer and why am I blanking on the kid's name?
Braden Smith.
Braden Smith, yeah. And then they just added the transfer from Southern Illinois, who is more of a 2 guard than he is a true point guard. So where do you stand on what Matt Painter is bringing in? Where do you stand on who he needs to target? And if you are him, who are you looking at? I mean, you just listed your top 10. Who are you trying to get? Who do they need? What's the answer for this group?
I mean, here's the deal. They pick up the transfer from SIU, Lance Jones, who's more of a straight 2. He's more of a straight 2, not a great shooter. He's got, as one assistant told me, he's got high major burst, really can guard, physical. So he sounds like a Purdue guy, right? In a lot of ways. But is that what you need if you're Matt Painter? No. I want a guy who's going to make fucking shots. I want a guy who's going to be able to take some of the pressure off Braden Smith when people come at him. Now, he'll be better equipped next year, but again, I don't want everything on him. I need another true combo, and this kid is not a combo.
What I will say is this. As a sophomore, he shot 43% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. As a junior, he shot 34% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. Last year, he shot 28% from 3 on 7.5 attempts per game. My question is, what kind of threes was he getting as a senior versus what he was getting as a sophomore? And what role is he going to play at Purdue versus what he played at Southern Illinois?
He'll get wide open threes like everybody else gets as long as Zach Edey comes back.
And if he can make them, yes. So it all, again, depends on Zach Edey returning. Do you have any insight on whether or not he's back? My gut says he's back.
I don't.
That's a guess. That's a guess. Like, that's just a straight up guess. My gut says that he's back.
Yeah, my gut says he's back too. My gut says right now they're trying to figure out the whole NIL piece because it's more complicated with a kid from out of the United States, and he's from Canada.
There's a lot of guys that we're going to be talking about that when we get into some of this conversation. Last one I want to get to: Brandon Murray committed to Chris Beard to Ole Miss. He played on a very bad team. He put up very good numbers on the bad team at Georgetown. What do you make of his commitment to Ole Miss and Chris Beard?
Yeah, he was good down in the league before at LSU, if you remember. He was really good as a freshman, went to Georgetown. It was, as I referred to earlier, kind of a shit show there. And he was hurt. They were losing every game. I mean, obviously we know what Beard has done as a coach and the cultures in the locker rooms. Look at what he did for Texas this past year. So I think it's a good addition for him. And the other one, I know we have 30 seconds here, but Texas, they're losing some guys here. Brumbaugh, Arterio Morris, a talented freshman guard, leaves. I think Dylan Mitchell is going to be huge for them, whether he comes back or not. He'll probably test the NBA waters is my guess. But what does Rodney Terry have at his disposal? And does he keep Bob Donwald and Steve McLean, who were his coordinators this past year?
Good question. One that we will answer the next time that we do one of these transfer portal breakdowns. This has been fun. We covered a lot of ground, man. A lot has happened. It's surprising to me how much has happened over the course of the last 72, 96 hours since Easter.
This was fun, other than
and
that I had to see you again. It was
well,
great.
yeah, look, you know what? I told you I didn't want to talk to you for 3 weeks and you won't stop texting me. So I figured this is going to be the way to get you to leave me alone.
Right.
Hopefully we'll do one of these at least once, maybe twice a week. So much is happening. There's so much moving. There's so many decisions being made and so much stuff we need to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed this. So for Jeff Goodman, for our producer, Dagan Hughes, for Trevor Valise, who's hanging around there somewhere, clipping some stuff out. Shout out to Trevor. My name is Rob Dauster. This has been the Transfer